Hello, my name is Alex Isles and welcome to Ad Gefrin, which is one of the old royal palaces of the kings of Northumbria up here in the northeast of England. Now in the location where I'm standing, roughly around here, we have some of the pagan heritage of Ad Gefrin. So originally the Anglo-Saxons come across and they are Germanic pagans, and when they're Germanic pagans they find Britain, and Britain has got a whole melody of different faiths going on at this time. So up here we're quite a distance north of Hadrian's Wall, and when we're quite a distance north of Hadrian's Wall, what you have around in this location is possibly some older Iron Age beliefs that have continued to survive. So those are from the people who we now call possibly like the Celts, but they are the Iron Age Britons. You've got Germanic Anglo-Saxons coming in, bringing in their faith as well, which has been influenced over the centuries by Roman faith as well, so it's a mixture of ideas there. And then you've also got Christianity existing in the British Isles, so there's a whole mix of ideas here. Now in this part of what would become Ad Gefrin, there was something around here. Now it's called a ring ditch enclosure. Now this is because archaeologists have had loads of arguments about what this actually was. Brian Hope Taylor, who was the archaeologist who excavated this site, believed it had been a stone circle. When he thought it was a stone circle, he saw that there was a ditch that had been dug and there were various depths, deeper parts of the ditch at various locations. He thought there had been stones in that point, then there had been a slight mound, and in the centre of the mound there had been a Bronze Age cremation burial. That Bronze Age cremation burial he then thought had had a stone placed over the top of it, and then it had been left. Later on, as you go into the British Iron Age, you thought someone had come along and removed the stones. But as you come into this period of the early Middle Ages, often called the Dark Ages, what happened here was that at this location, Ad Gefrin, they had built a square or slightly rectangular building around this location. And when they'd built this square building around it, they had then started burying into it. Now this isn't too unusual in the British Isles. We've seen this in other locations too, where the new peoples coming into the British Isles at the end of the Roman period of late antiquity into the early Middle Ages, they find sites significant to the local population. Normally these are like Bronze Age sites or things like that, and they start burying their dead into it. So all the way around in a sort of circular shape the burials were placed into it, and as the burials were placed into it they think that this was either a palisade or a building. Now if it was a building, in the centre where there had been the cremation, what they did is they placed a post, and this post seemed to be a central feature because some of the burials were actually placed almost looking like an arrow pointing towards this central post, which has been interpreted by some archaeologists as almost like a totem pole, similar to the North American totem poles, and it may, looking at other Anglo-Saxon or sort of Germanic art, have been carved and had a sort of a symbol on it. Again, the real temptation is to look at the name of the location, Ad Gefrin, which in the Anglo-Saxon language means the place of goats. So if you have this here, maybe there was a goat-headed sort of totem right here that would have been a focus point for the local people. Another thing to take into account is that the Iron Age Britons don't seem to have practiced burial in the ground, so this is called inhumation by archaeologists. Instead, it's maybe that they practiced some form of exhumation where the bodies were left maybe on hilltops or around cairns or things like that, and the animals or the local landscape would dispose of the body that way. Also on top of that as well, they may have practiced cremation, but the thing is we don't really find many burials around this area from the Iron Age Britons. But the Germanic peoples who have moved in, they actually are practicing inhumation. So the thing to consider is, when they're practicing this inhumation, is this native people who have adopted this, or is it alongside this as well, just Germanic migrants coming in? sadly, unless they do genetic research on the skeletons or they do isotopic analysis on things like teeth, we won't know where these people came from and what their genetic mixture was like. Were they native Britons mixed with the Germanics, or were they pure Germanic or native Britons who adopted culture? It's one of those things that's been lost to time, but another fascinating question for us to think, to mill over, and to really go, what does this place look like? What is this area like, and how are the people using it? Now, when you have this would have been in the location. They had 31 burials buried into this mound, and then at some point later, it was then the walls around were demolished and the posts were removed. And then slightly to the north of it, there was a hall built, or two halls built. One of them seems to be domestic or have people living inside of it, but the second hall has been interpreted as a temple, and it's got its own interesting features as well. First of all, to the northwest of that hall, there was 3 posts placed in the ground that don't seem to be supporting any weight. When they don't seem to be supporting any weight, those have actually been interpreted almost like their own sort of new totems in the northwest of the building. And then at the eastern door there was a pit, and consecutively large ox skulls were buried in there. Now that would be almost a very interesting thing, because Brian Hope Taylor, when he was looking at it, he suggested that that was just like cleaning up after a feast, but there's no other domestic waste inside this building. So it's almost like maybe animals like large bulls were brought inside here, or other cattle. They were ritually sacrificed, then butchered, and then their skulls were then buried alongside other bones as well inside this pit inside the building, as a part of a continuation of the ritual or the religious significance of this site. So whether or not this is a native Iron Age British tradition is then continued within this site and mixed with the Germanic tradition, or a pure Germanic tradition, or a mixture of this sort of different ideas that have now been developed as these new people are migrating into this area and living around here, we'll just never know. But it's very interesting to see that you'd have this continuation from a Bronze Age site that's then been reused slightly later. Then you've got this sort of temple building with the burials of cattle skulls and bones in the pit inside, and possibly freestanding posts which could be interpreted as a totem. So right here you've got this really interesting site which is obviously of some form of religious significance to the people living around here. They've used it since the Bronze Age, and they've constantly added to it with different people interpreting it different ways, with initially a Bronze Age cremation, then having the burials inside, and then following on from the burials we have this temple building. And this is really interesting because later on, as the site gains significance, we then know from Bede that this is a location where the early Christians of Northumberland are baptized. Around 3,000 over a period of roughly around a month are baptized in this area. So as again, when later on the missionaries come up here, they know this is an important site for the faith of the local people. Amazing stuff going on up here in northeastern England during that period after the Romans have left, and you always are left with this wondering of what was going on here, what sort of faith, what sort of rituals, what sort of actions were going on in and around this area. As always, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I've been able to open up another section of the past, and you've been able to see as these people migrated in, they took over this area, used a previous site that was in use here, and turned it into a place of worship during this early medieval period. As always, please do like and subscribe, share with your friends, write a comment below, and I'll try and answer your questions. And I look forward to hopefully sharing more history with you in the near future. Until then though, stay safe and well, and thank you so much.